So as you heard very clearly, it takes a lot of individuals to make a community a reality. And I'm going to lead you through one of the oldest permanent supportive housing communities in the county. We recently just celebrated 10 years at Diamond Apartment Homes in Anaheim. And I was looking on Facebook after this celebration, which happened about 2 weeks ago, and I was so excited to see that the photos really told the story of how we got there. There were individuals who spoke about how this community was created. There was a lot of representation from the city staff. And I thought maybe just going through the photos and then hearing from Raul Fernandez, who's been I was going to say my right-hand man, but he's on my left, so he's my left-hand man today, in terms of creating the wraparound services that have continued there. And you're also going to hear from Mark, who's one of the residents there, about what this kind of supportive housing means. So I'm going to leave that picture up there for a minute because I want you to appreciate that this is permanent supportive housing. And when you drive past this community, it's right off the 5 freeway at Lincoln, and you look at that community, and doesn't it look exactly like all the other rental communities in the neighborhood? And that's what we've created. We want it to be just another form of rental housing. And I'll tell you a couple of anecdotes about that, how it really is that model. Diamond, as I said, celebrated 10 years recently of providing permanent housing to residents. And how it came about, I think the story really speaks to a huge number of issues that we see in creating housing. You might think, okay, that's been there, no worries, 10 years. We had some of the most horrible meetings with the city that the city has ever had. We had people who said horrible things about people in the audience with mental illness. And I often think back to probably 15 years ago when we started having the conversations about what we were developing. It was never going to happen. I mean, we were very discouraged about this. But what you see there represented is a community where 25 individuals, all of whom came from chronic homelessness, with serious and persistent mental illness. They all have a diagnosis. And some of them have been living there for 10 years. The first 2 years, nobody moved out. It's a successful model. It works. So in this community, as we developed it, there are 25 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. There are 15 1-bedrooms, and 9 2-bedrooms, offices for property management, offices for case managers, a beautiful community. But the celebration that we had of 10 years of doing this, I think really shows what it takes to make this happen. So, as somebody said, you can't have a celebration without flowers. So some of the flowers on the tables from our celebration. Jamboree is, you may have heard from us before, we're an affordable housing non-profit. So we develop housing for a variety of communities. We house 1,700 seniors in our 18,000 people. And I know I have some folks who've heard about our senior housing in the audience today. At this celebration, we had a check-in and we had lots of people who'd been involved in the celebration for years. Some old friends. I'm smiling as I see the picture of one of our former resident services coordinators greeting another staff member, because it is all about partnerships there. We have kids. These were 2 of the children of speakers that day who talked about what the housing there had meant to her. And you'll see her picture later. She gave a very moving discussion about what her housing meant. We needed to have a lot of officials. How many of you recognize Sharon Quirk-Silver? Very involved in affordable housing and recently re-elected to the Assembly. She's been instrumental in some legislation, and she's talking there to the current mayor of Anaheim. So we came a long way from the NIMBY issues that I'll talk about in a minute to having many of the city representatives and county representatives there. Another picture of some of the residents and the local celebrities. And you see Mark, he's wearing his stigma-busting t-shirt there. That's one of his favorite t-shirts, I think. And some of us have those. Raoul, my husband Alan and I, we all have those t-shirts. So where did we get them? We were doing the NAMI walk, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. They have a walk every year, and we were part of a team organized by a young woman who lived in some of our housing. We were the Stigma Busters. She actually painted herself green, I think, that year. She was quite the stigma buster. But this picture, I think, shows over on the far right is the former mayor of Anaheim, who was the mayor 10 years ago. He spoke very eloquently about what happened and how we got this community. Our president, Laura Archuleta's on the far left. Up here next to her is Brenda. Brenda's a female veteran who's lived at Diamond for 10 years, and I always tell the story of Brenda. She's definitely one of our success stories. She was with the Navy, lived in Asia for quite a few years before she had her mental health issues and became homeless on the streets of Orange County. When she was housed at Diamond, she has, as I said, been there for 10 years. And I always like the story about walking down the hallways at Diamond, and you see on Brenda's door, she would always have a poster saying, "Do not disturb." She was practicing to become a court reporter, and she was at 175 words a minute and needed to get to 200. I just found out recently that she's been hired by the VA in Long Beach and is working full-time. But I think we're going to have a better part of the success story, because you may have heard we broke ground last month on 75 units for formerly homeless veterans in Santa Ana. And my goal is to have, we don't need to have her going all the way up to Long Beach. She should be working in this community, right? So we want her back here. This is the mayor, the current mayor of Anaheim, Harry Sadu, who spoke at our celebration. And you see great support for the city, from the city. And like most of the other permanent housing communities, each one of the residents has a rental subsidy through what are called project-based Section 8 vouchers. So they pay 30% of their income, which is typically a disability income of around $900. They pay 30% of that, which is typically, again, less than $300. Their income's $900. Think about what that would mean in terms of finding housing. These are all individuals who are disabled because of their mental health diagnosis. They can never afford to pay market rate without that kind of a subsidy. So that subsidy, which is provided through the Anaheim Housing Authority, similar to what Santa Ana Housing Authority provides, is crucial to our being able to create this housing. Laura Archuleta, our President and CEO, talking about Jamboree. And as I mentioned, non-profit organization Majority of our housing is what we describe as workforce housing. It's for people who are low income. The average income among our 18,000 residents for a family of 4 is $26,000 a year. Imagine trying to rent something in Orange County for $26,000. I mean, you just can't. And so that really speaks to why affordable housing must be one of the things that we provide in Orange County to create the solutions. That's Kurt Pringle, the mayor of Anaheim when we first began this development. The city of Anaheim had 3 sites where they were realigning the 5 freeway. Jamboree applied for those 3 sites and was awarded the opportunity to develop on those 3 sites. 2 of them, one's called Monarch and the other one is Greenleaf, and we have affordable housing on those 2 sites. The 3rd site was a small remnant where Diamond Apartments was created. The night that this community was brought forward, the neighboring broker leafleted the community the night before and said, sexual predators are moving in next door. You can imagine the reaction from our neighborhood around the development. We didn't have design plans, we had nothing in place other than the opportunity to build housing. Obviously, sexual predators aren't able to live in this community, not eligible, so that really created a huge amount of fear and pushback. So how did we address that not in my backyard reaction that we got? And as I said, those meetings, Kurt Pringle talked, he said that was the most horrible city council meeting that he ever went to, because people were just horrible to people in the audience who were people with a mental health diagnosis who might be moving into this building. It took us 2 years of community meetings. We had 14 community meetings where we educated the community about who was really moving in and what their needs were. And I think you will realize that this was not a community where you needed to be afraid of people, and you'll see from some of my pictures why that's definitely the case. So after 2 years, the City Council voted, not quite unanimously, but they voted to go ahead. And I think that's one of the keys. We have to educate our City Council members about what this solution looks like. And we need to address the fear. There is fear about what a homeless person looks like, who they are, and who they aren't. So together we need to do a better job, I think, of informing and educating, and I hope that you're all going to be part of that solution. And having a city council that would stand up to the opposition in the community, and then 10 years later you have the whole city council there saying what a wonderful community it is. So we did the job. So that's the current mayor speaking about what a wonderful community it is after 10 years. Harry Sadu, the current mayor. One of the other speakers at our celebration is Dr. Jose Moreno, who is a current city council member, a great advocate for addressing homelessness in Anaheim. Jose shared at the time, at this celebration, he said, I actually was one of the neighbors in the community when this community was first discussed. And he said, I couldn't believe the vitriol and what people were saying about homeless people who were going to move in. And now he's a member of the city council and obviously a great supporter of these kind of solutions. So from coming as a neighbour of a future development, he's being able to speak really about what this community means. This is one of our residents, the mother of those two cute little boys that you see standing there, and she talked that day about her journey from homelessness with her mental health diagnosis and what that housing has meant to her. And she's lived there for a couple of years now, and that's her home. So she creates the message of today, homeless to home, is what this is all about. Getting hugs from people. We had a great food truck there, by the way, and you'll see a picture of it. So she got a picture with her family there, and that would be a typical resident in a lot of our housing, a single mother with a couple of children, pretty typical person. I don't think you're going to be afraid of her or her kids. And that's Jose Moreno and one of the other city council members there talking with the children. I mean, it was just such a wonderful celebration of what we've created there in that community. More pictures of the community and the residents in the outside area there. And our feature mark, that we'll hear from in a little bit. One of the things that we did that day, we invited city council members from other cities to see what this looks like. Because we really believe that if people know what this means, they're going to be much more willing to see that community in their own neighborhood. Because that's how we're going to create all these units. And I'm looking at the pictures, I see one of our new Board of Supervisors, Doug Chafee. There are people, all the city council from Anaheim were there in attendance. Jennifer Fitzgerald from Fullerton. We had the head of the healthcare agency. We had the city council, Mayor Pro Tem from Costa Mesa. We need to get people from the cities to see what this is and educate them. And so we did that day. Obviously pictures, and you can see some of this on YouTube if you want to watch the actual celebration. This is one of my favorite pictures because you can't tell from the rear picture, but that's Jill Rapogel from Public Radio. And she's done a wonderful series on homelessness and Anaheim. And she and one of her fellow reporters, when they were doing this series about the challenges of creating these kind of models in Fullerton, she and her fellow reporter walked the neighborhood of Diamond. And she put a piece on the radio and in print, and you can read it. They walked around and talked to the neighbors. After 10 years, what do you think about the community here, Diamond Apartment Homes? Nobody that they talked to knew what it was. Okay? It had been there for 10 years. Oh, housing for homeless? No. Housing for people with mental illness? Nobody had any idea what it was. So when we do this right, and Orchard does it right, and we do this right, this model is something that every neighborhood should embrace as part of the solution. So, you know, we were sort of surprised that people didn't know about it. They did. One of the neighbors said, we think we might have seen a police car there occasionally. And when we asked about our property manager why that might have been the case, well, we're good neighbors. If we see an issue in the neighborhood, we call the police and they come out. This is Neighborhood Watch. And you're going to hear from Raul and Mark in a minute. And I just wanted you to see he and his beautiful bride, Ira. He's recently married. And congratulations. And you're going to hear from them in a minute. And Mark showed his apartment, very proud of his apartment. He's going to tell us more about that in a moment. We toured his apartment. And again, we had the crowd of supporters. We probably had about 100 people there. You probably recognize a few. And we obviously had good food. And that food truck. And what I love about this picture, this is a woman who's very active in Buena Park. And we are hopeful that we will have a new community soon in Buena Park. So it was great that you could come and see what it's going to look like. And let me introduce Raul Fernandez, who's going to tell you about why, besides housing, why this community works.